She closed her eyes, a single thought rising to the surface, clear and resolute. Sometimes, the skies aren't the hardest thing to conquer. It's the people who think you don't belong in them. Anita smiled softly as the jet climbed higher, carrying her and her vision to new heights. Sit back and relax as Anita's story unfolds. Try to like, share, and subscribe. Anita Davidson adjusted her tailored navy blazer as she stepped out of the sleek black car. The morning sunlight glinted off her heels as they clicked confidently on the pristine marble floor of the private jet terminal. Heads turned briefly, then just as quickly looked away. She wasn't the usual clientele here. That much was clear from the whispers trailing in her wake. Anita didn't slow her stride. Her presence was commanding, chin high, steps deliberate, but she couldn't ignore the faint hum of assumptions buzzing in the air. Who is she? An assistant? A guest, maybe? The whispers carried a mix of curiosity and dismissal. Her designer bag hung lightly on her arm as she approached her jet. The aircraft was immaculate, its white and silver exterior gleaming in the sun. Anita paused at the bottom of the staircase, her fingers brushing along the polished metal rail. She smiled softly, marveling at the beauty of something she had worked so hard to achieve. From a distance, Captain Greg Weston observed her. His arms were crossed, his brow furrowed in suspicion. She wasn't the type of person he expected to see near a private jet. He strode over, his crisp uniform pressed to perfection, shoes polished to a mirror shine. His voice was sharp and clipped when he addressed her. "Can I help you, ma'am?" Anita turned to face him, her expression calm but curious. "No, thank you," she said with a warm smile. Greg's eyes narrowed. "This jet is reserved for an important passenger," he stated firmly. "It's not open to visitors." Anita tilted her head slightly, the corner of her mouth lifting in a knowing smile. "I know," she replied. "It's mine." For a moment, there was silence. Then Greg laughed, a nervous, disbelieving sound that grated against the quiet confidence of her tone. "Yours?" he repeated, his voice tinged with incredulity. "That's interesting." His eyes scanned her from head to toe, searching for something, anything, that might explain her claim. "Do you have any proof of that?" Anita met his gaze without flinching. Slowly, she reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek leather case. She opened it, revealing her identification and ownership documents. Her movements were deliberate, her expression unchanging, as if she had been through this too many times before. Greg glanced at the documents, his expression faltering. The staff nearby shifted uncomfortably, exchanging uneasy glances. "Ms. Davidson," he said, his voice tight. "I'll need to verify this with the terminal. You understand?" "I understand," Anita said, her voice calm but firm. She gestured to the documents. "Take your time. I'll wait here." As the captain walked away, she let out a quiet breath, steadying herself. The whispers around her had stopped, replaced by an awkward silence. Anita turned back to her jet, her fingers once again brushing the polished rail. It wasn't the first time someone had doubted her right to be here, and she had a feeling it wouldn't be the last. The captain returned with Anita's credentials in hand, his expression a mix of confusion and stubbornness. He cleared his throat, gripping the documents as if they held a secret he refused to believe. "Ms. Davidson," he began, his tone flat and skeptical. "I've reviewed your paperwork, but there must be some kind of mistake. You couldn't possibly." He paused, as though searching for the right words. "You couldn't possibly own this jet." Anita folded her arms, her gaze unwavering. "Why not?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. Greg hesitated. "Well, it's not common for someone." He trailed off, his words hanging in the air like an unspoken accusation. "For someone like me." Anita pressed, raising an eyebrow. Greg flushed but didn't back down. "This is a serious matter, ma'am. Jets like these don't just belong to anyone." The tension in the air grew thicker as Anita took a slow, measured breath. "I understand your concern, Captain," she said evenly. "But the documents are in order. I am the owner of this jet. Perhaps you should check again." The captain's lips tightened into a thin line. Instead of walking away, he turned to the ground crew standing nearby, his voice rising for all to hear. "Can someone verify these claims?" he called out, waving the papers in the air. "This doesn't seem right to me." Heads turned. Conversation stopped. The murmurs began again, louder this time, as Anita felt the weight of every pair of eyes on her. The whispers returned, sharper and more pointed. "Is she serious? Who does she think she is? Maybe she's lying." Anita stood tall, refusing to let the judgment in their stares break her composure. Still, the ache of indignity simmered beneath her calm facade. Greg faced her again, his voice now openly condescending. "Look, Mom, I don't know what story you're trying to spin here, but do you think I'm a fool? You expect me to believe that you—" He gestured vaguely. "Run a company that can afford this." Anita's eyes narrowed. "I don't think you're a fool, Captain," she said, her tone sharp as a blade. "I think you're making assumptions you have no right to make." Greg smirked, shaking his head. "Sure. Let me guess, you're some CEO or something." He scoffed. "What is it? A small business? A startup? Because this," he gestured toward the jet, "is out of your league." Anita felt her patience slipping, the cool veneer she had worked so hard to maintain cracking at the edges. "I am the CEO," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I founded a company that's revolutionized AI and robotics. And yes, I can afford this jet." The captain laughed, an outright dismissive laugh that echoed through the terminal. "Revolutionized I," he mocked. "Right. And I'm the President of the United States. Let's not waste any more time with fantasies, Ms. Davidson." For a moment, Anita felt the sting of his words, a sharp reminder of the battles she'd fought and the ones she still had to fight. But she refused to let him see her hurt. She stepped aside, pulling out her phone without a word. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, dialing a number. The murmurs grew louder as the staff watched her in stunned silence. Who's she calling? Is she bluffing? Anita ignored them all. She raised the phone to her ear, her voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. "This is Anita," she said. "I need you at the terminal. Now." She hung up, her movements precise and controlled. Folding her arms, she stood by the jet, her gaze fixed ahead. The ground crew and Captain Weston exchanged nervous glances, the tension in the air crackling like static electricity. Time seemed to stretch. Anita didn't flinch under the weight of their stares. Inside, her frustration burned like a quiet fire, but her resolve was unshaken. She had learned long ago how to wait out storms, no matter how fierce. Now she would wait for this one to pass, and for the truth to shatter every assumption in its path. Anita stood by the jet, her posture straight, her face calm. The whispers continued to ripple through the gathered staff, their eyes darting between her and the captain, who was now fidgeting awkwardly. Then, the sound of engines broke through the murmurs. A convoy of sleek black SUVs rolled into the terminal's private lot, their arrival as smooth and deliberate as a well-orchestrated performance. All eyes turned to the convoy as the vehicles came to a stop. Doors opened in unison, and a group of sharply dressed individuals stepped out. Security personnel flanked them, their presence commanding attention. "Ms. Davidson," a tall man in a gray suit called out, striding toward her with an air of urgency. The entire group followed, their expressions a mix of respect and deference. The ground crew and Captain Weston froze, their mouths slightly open as they watched the scene unfold. "Ms. Davidson, I apologize for the delay," the man said as he reached her. He extended a hand, but Anita didn't take it. Instead, she tilted her head slightly toward the captain, her expression unreadable. "Please," Anita said, her voice calm, "explain to Captain Weston why I'm here." The man turned to Greg, his professional demeanor unshaken. Ms. Anita Davidson is the CEO and founder of Innovatech Industries, one of the leading pioneers in AI and robotics. She's not only the owner of this jet, but also one of the most respected figures in the tech industry. He glanced at Anita, his tone softening. Her credentials are indisputable. Greg's face drained of color. He began, but no words came out. He looked around, desperate for something to anchor him as the weight of the moment crashed down on him. The man continued, producing more documents. Here is additional proof of ownership, including Innovatech's corporate records listing this jet as a company asset under Ms. Davidson's name. The ground crew whispered among themselves, their astonishment palpable. Anita remained silent, her gaze steady on the captain. Greg finally found his voice. Ms. Davidson. I had no idea. His words tumbled over each other in a panicked attempt to make amends. I deeply apologize for my behavior. It was unprofessional. And Anita raised a hand, cutting him off. Her expression was calm, almost serene, but there was a sharpness in her eyes that made Greg falter. You didn't know? She asked, her voice quiet but laced with an unmistakable edge. Or you didn't want to know? Greg opened his mouth to respond, but no sound came. The staff and bystanders watched in silence as the scene unfolded, their earlier judgments now replaced with discomfort and shame. After a long pause, Anita finally spoke, her tone measured and deliberate. I hired a pilot, Captain Weston, someone who could fly my jet with skill and professionalism. What I didn't hire was a judge of character. That's not your job. Greg looked like he had been struck. Ms. Davidson, please. I didn't mean to. You're fired, Anita said, her voice calm but final. The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. Greg stood there, stunned, his face a mask of disbelief. Security personnel stepped forward, gesturing for him to leave. As the captain was escorted away, Anita turned to the man in the gray suit. Thank you for coming so quickly. Of course, Ms. Davidson, he replied with a slight bow. Anita let out a quiet breath, her calm composure never faltering. She glanced at the jet, her hand once again brushing the polished rail. Without another word, she climbed the steps and entered the aircraft, her presence commanding even as she disappeared from view. Outside, the ground crew stood silently, the lesson of the day etched into their minds. In the air left behind, Anita's quiet authority lingered, a testament to the power of knowing your worth and never letting anyone diminish it. The incident at the private jet terminal was supposed to be a quiet embarrassment, a moment lost in the shuffle of a busy day. But the world had other plans. By the next morning, Anita Davidson's story was everywhere. Headlines blared across screens and newspapers. Black CEO denied her own jet. Pilot fired after assumptions go awry, and breaking barriers. Anita Davidson confronts bias in aviation. The media latched onto every detail. Her calm demeanor in the face of humiliation, the captain's arrogance, and the stark contrast between her achievements and the treatment she received. Clips of the incident taken by onlookers went viral, sparking debates about systemic bias, respect, and the struggles of Black women even at the pinnacle of success. Anita's phone buzzed nonstop with messages of support from friends, colleagues, and strangers alike. Thank you for standing tall. One message read, You've shown us all how to handle injustice with grace, said another. Still, Anita wasn't one to rest on symbolic victories. She knew that this incident, while personal, pointed to a larger problem. During an interview with a prominent news anchor, Anita addressed the issue head-on. This wasn't just about me, she said, her voice steady but filled with conviction. This is about the assumptions we carry and how they shape the opportunities, or lack thereof, available to people of color, to women, to anyone who doesn't fit a narrow mold of success. The skies belong to all of us, not just a privileged few. The interview became a catalyst for action. Anita announced the launch of the Open Skies Initiative, a program aimed at dismantling systemic biases in the aviation industry. The initiative focused on three pillars: scholarships for aspiring pilots. Anita pledged millions to fund training programs for underrepresented groups, ensuring that anyone with talent and determination could have a chance to soar. Bias awareness training. She partnered with leading organizations to implement mandatory training for aviation professionals, tackling the unconscious prejudices that too often determined who was seen as capable or worthy. Mentorship programs. Anita herself became a mentor, sharing her journey to inspire and guide the next generation of leaders. Her announcement was met with overwhelming support. Airlines, aviation schools, and industry leaders reached out, eager to collaborate. Anita's poise and determination turned a painful moment into a movement for change. 2 weeks later, Anita found herself once again climbing the steps to her jet. This time, there were no assumptions, no hesitation. The new pilot, a young woman named Elena, a scholarship recipient from Anita's program, stood at the top of the stairs, her smile warm and respectful. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Davidson," Elena said. "It's an honor to fly you today." Anita smiled back, her heart swelling with pride. "The honor is mine, Captain," she replied. As the jet soared into the sky, Anita gazed out the window. The clouds stretched endlessly before her, a reminder of the infinite possibilities she had fought to claim, not just for herself, but for so many others. Sitting in the quiet cabin, Anita's thoughts drifted. The battle she had faced wasn't new, and it wouldn't be the last. But she had proven something, not just to the world, but to herself. She closed her eyes, a single thought rising to the surface, clear and resolute. Sometimes the skies aren't the hardest thing to conquer. It's the people who think you don't belong in them. Anita smiled softly as the jet climbed higher, carrying her and her vision to new heights. "Thank you for joining us on this journey. Your presence means the world to us, and we hope our stories resonate with you." Try subscribing and sharing where you're watching from in the comments. Together, let's keep spreading inspiration far and wide. See you soon.